Hey there guys, this is Greg from NFG Customs, and I've been on the bench most of the weekend, and my area is a complete disaster right now. So I'm building a WGP spec ripper, and I think it would be figured it would be fun to have you guys join us. So this is what we're building right here: WGP spec ripper with a rip frame. So it should be a neat build. Hopefully I have everything for it. So I figured you guys can join me as I kind of work through this one here. It's actually a really nice ano job. Not sure who did it, but this has been what's up, Dave? How you doing, man? So anyway, big difference between a WGP spec and an Inception retro spec. Basically, so the spacing for the frame is different. So the rip frame, or not the rip frame, the Inception spacing is a little bit longer than traditional WGP. What's up, James? How you doing, brother? And there also doesn't have the bosses. If you look here, the frame holes, it doesn't have the bosses. That's those little pieces of metal that stick up. Now, in my opinion, and I'm sure others as well, I think the bosses really are, it's a better approach because it gives a lot more meat for those frame screws to drill into the body. Because if you look at the body, that lower tube, there's really not a whole lot of meat there for the screws to go into. And when you add the bosses, you pretty much double that amount of material for the screws to go into. It keeps them from stripping out. But that being said, I personally have never broken a frame off of a WGP spec gun. I mean, we have had to, tap and helicoil frame screws. We do. I mean, we probably do 8 or 10 of those a year, where we have to basically replace the threads. But I think more of that is really from guys just really wrenching down and over tightening the screws a lot more than they really should. So anyway, so let's go ahead and I will tilt you guys down and you can start watching what I'm doing here. I already installed the valve, and then I was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna do a video and let these guys see what we're doing here. So let's get to it, right? All right, so here we are. We're at this spot. I put the feed neck on. The valve is installed. This actually, I'm not sure what valve this is. I think it might be a rat valve, but I'm not sure. It looked a little different. Maybe I'm not sure what valve it is that I put in there, but got a really nice looking ASA there. This is going to be really sharp when it's done getting all put together. So, all right. So let's go ahead and we can keep moving on the lower tube. Okay. So he sent along a volumizer. That's probably not the right answer for a WGP spec full body. So I think we might put a I think we might go ahead and install a just a regular banjo bolt in there. I'm not a fan of just putting those in without any really good reason to do it. And I think that a lot of people, they want to put them on so they look cool, but the reality is that unless if you're trying to fix a problem, like they work well with a Mini, right? So a Mini, you're chopping off this much, right? So if you want to run a lower pressure, then you want to have the extra volume. So it's kind of one of those things where you need to do something to make up that volume, since you chopped, how much of the gun off, like almost an inch, right, of that air chamber. And the volumizer is going to help you make that up, right? So we're gonna set the lug there. And then let's go ahead, we'll put our spring in there. I don't know if the spring is really gonna cut the mustard. It's really a short spring. So this IVG is really gonna have to be completely buried for this to work. But I guess we'll try it. We'll put it in and we'll try it out. I really like to keep the IVGs as close to flush with the body as I can, just because it gives you, if you use springs that are the right size, right, it's going to keep you, it's going to give you the most amount of adjustability through your IVG, and then you'll have to rely less on the oh shit, got the wrong O-ring on there. So this is actually a good learning moment here, right? So when you buy the Inception IVGs, they actually come with 2 O-rings. The fatter one, or not the fatter one, but the larger one is for Inception spec guns, and the smaller one is for WGP spec guns. And the reason being, the lower tube for the Inception Retro is slightly, it just has a little bit more room in the back. So it's slightly larger, but you're not going to get superior performance or any of that nonsense because you got a larger lower tube. It's just one of those things that it's just one of those things. You know, so but yeah, so you see now it fits in there just perfect, and I usually go, you know, about 1 turn in or so. That spring's actually rattling around a little bit in there, so it's going to have to go deeper to really make this work the way it should. So kind of what we're doing here is we're fishing through all the parts he sent, and trying to figure out what's what, and I'm trying to assemble everything kind of as it comes. So that's the reg, and then I guess I'm gonna have to make a list and say, hey, this is the stuff that we had to put in your kit. So so we got, here's our reg internals. Let's get that off. And hopefully the spring is in here, because I do not have any extras of those any longer. So there's our beaver tail. And this has a rip frame, so we're going to be taking it off of the block. All right. So it appears we need a reg spring. But I do not believe I have any of those left, so that is a bit of a problem. All right, let me think here. Maybe we'll get lucky and I have one left here that I didn't know I had. I know, this is super fun. Oh, look at that. Oh, what a lucky man he is right there. One other thing that's good to keep in your toolbox, guys, is keep some of these reg seats in there, all right? If you're using Resurrection, Inception, or basically any reg you're using, right, you want to keep an extra rebuild kit. But the reg seats can be a little tricky to get, so it's a good idea. Always keep a rebuild kit in case you need it. So let's go ahead and put this reg together then. Looks like we got everything we need, right? Dow 55, do not want to use that. My area is such a shit show right now. So I apologize if you end up having to see any of it. But, you know, you guys, there we go. All right, so first things first, we're going to go ahead and we're going to, oh, look at that. The O-ring's still in there. So this looks like he wiped it off pretty good, so we're not going to have to really mess with this too much. We'll just grease her up. And one of the cool things about the Inception regulators is you can use a cocking rod to install the piston. So you put that in there. Make sure it poked through. And I really try not to, oh shit, I just pushed it right back through. All right, and then I just unseated the O-ring. I'm having a hell of a day. There we go. All right, we'll just do it this way then. So we install that there. And then to do the lower assembly, we're going to put a top hat on there, that brand spanking new reg spring, and the other top hat there. And then we'll put the other O-ring on there. And for those of you guys that are leaving comments and stuff, just bear with me because I don't really, I can't really see the comments as I'm doing this. So I'll circle back shortly and answer comments. So if you look here, we have the reg seat. The black or white piece needs to go in first. So that needs to be against the top hat. And then you just screw in the thing, the adjuster. Now with the Inception regs, it's a good idea. You want to run it in. Because they are, the way they work is in is off. All right. All right. So that part is done. We have our O-rings here, inside of here. So let's get a little Dow and we'll smear that on there. You don't need a ton of Dow on these. Just, I mean, like that is enough for one of these O-rings. You don't need a ton of it. You just need enough to get that thing in place and make sure it seals. So there we go. Now we're going to screw the. There's an O-ring that goes here. This can be basically any old O-ring. I think it's like a number 12 or 13 or something like that. Maybe an 11. I forget. Then you screw the lower cap on. And then we'll put the top cap on. And this looks like it was just basically a brand new reg that he just disassembled. I don't know if he was going to send this to Anno and then change his mind. Not sure, but so now his reg is done. All right. So these are screws for the ASA. Now, one thing I didn't see yet is, there it is, RIP frame guts. Oh, there's another IVG there. Not sure what that's for. Extra springs. Oh, look at that. I actually think this might be mine. All right. So let's go ahead and assemble a RIP frame. That is actually something that I'm kind of been wanting to do with you guys. Because I get people asking about it. There is, I mean, it's not complicated, but you do have to know what you're doing. Wow. That's a good spring there, huh? My Not even sure what that's for. Let's see what we got here. Hopefully, so hopefully he's got all the spacers, and because I think I have one extra spacer in there. Oh, there's one of them. So these spacers, these are these really, really little things here. See, that's what it is right there. That's one of the secret keys to the success of the RIP frame, to why it's so awesome. Let's see if there's another one in here. Oh man, I only see one. Well, hopefully, let me look through the little pile of parts here. Yeah, whenever you guys ship stuff, oh, you know what? That was the safety spring. That's what that was. So whenever you guys ship parts in to have a gun built, it's really important that stuff like this, don't just shove it in a bag. Stuff like that has a habit of going missing. It'll get like stuck to other parts, or just, I mean, just in general, it gets lost. And stuff gets mangled, like this spring. So it's always a good idea to try and break it up into separate baggies if you can. All right, so I found another spacer, so we're good to go there. So, all right, well, let's get to building the RIP frame. Here we go. All right, so first thing I want to do, look for any like gunk, any kind of like ano masking or any of that kind of nonsense. You can always sometimes, you know, you can have even the best ano guys, and you know, they don't get all the masking out or whatever. So you know, it's just one of those things. All right, so usually when I set up a RIP frame, I almost always use the middleweight spring. So what's cool about Inception springs is that they're really easy to figure out. You just line them up next to each other, and the shortest is the softest, the longest is the hardest, and the one in the middle, well, that's the one you want. And we are missing a part. So behind the spring in Inception frames, there is a little plug, and it's usually black or blue, and that is what you stick your that's what you stick in your spring, and that keeps it from, you know, flopping all around and going all ass akimbo on you. So let me see if I have any extras here. I really don't think I do. So we might be SOL on finishing this up tonight. This might have to be a to be continued project. Springs. Shit. Trying to think where I might have another one of those. I usually keep a couple of extras, and then I had a couple guns where I needed to use them, and now I think I am out of them. Sometimes I might get lucky. You know what? Maybe I have one over here in the big box. he's a lucky guy. Because I do happen to have, I found an extra one here. And I found another safety assembly too. I have so many parts at any given time. It's just crazy how many parts I have. So let's go ahead. It's a whole set of trigger springs there, so we'll just put these right back in the bag, because we'll be able to use them for something else. Because somebody will send a frame and it won't have any springs in it. So, all right. So, anyway, so this is what we're looking for, this little guy right here. So we're going to find our mid-size trigger spring, and then you put that on there like that. See that? That's what you're looking to do. And then you take your spring and you put it down in the groove, and make sure that that thing lines up. So you see what you got to do? Make sure that lines up with the shape, and you'll be good to go. So, then we need to do the shoulder bolts. So I usually just use a little Loctite glue on these shoulder bolts. I don't like leaving them completely naked, because they do have a tendency to wiggle their way out, and we don't really want that to happen, because they wiggle out and then your whole frame will just go and then that really makes your day suck. So hopefully we can avoid that whole issue by using a little bit of Loctite. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our trigger plate, and this is a little trickier than in the flea frames, because these don't have anything, it doesn't stick out past the frame. So you got to line it up just so. And then I use an Allen key and I pull back the spring. Then I just, oh shit. And I just, oh, this is a ball end. Shit, that's my problem. Using a ball end. So what happened there was my spring kind of popped out. And where'd my rubber go? Oh, there it is. Let's try that again. That happens every once in a while. And I usually find it happens when you're using a ball end. But I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing, so that's how that happened. So hopefully we can do this and not do that again. So I'm going to take it in there. I'm going to use this to pull the spring back. Pull that guy in there like that. All right. Then we're going to take one of our shoulder screws. We're going to put that in. And the nice thing about these, the way these plates are, it's not like using the shoulder screws is nice, because it gives the plate something to glide on. And then also, when you're putting it together, you don't have to like hold the whole thing together while you're trying to like shove a pin in. Definitely makes it a little bit easier. I really like how much thought Simon puts into those kind of details. And I don't know if it's just a byproduct of what he was what he was doing, or whatever, but it definitely is nice. Now sometimes these guys come apart, not a big deal. Just take the little bearing and you take the pin, and oh shit, I completely missed. Because the nice thing is that the way the frame is that it's going to hold it'll hold this all together, so you don't have to worry if it's a little loose. If anything, it makes it a hair smoother. So there we go. That's in there like so. Then we're going to take our sear spring, and then we're going to put our sear in there, and then you just line the hole up. And you get another shoulder screw. And we'll run this guy in. Just like so. Oh, there we go. Why am I using this cheap Allen key? I hate these. So I have the cat's litter box over there, and my one cat just came down and took like a massive shit, and my God, it smells horrible. I know. Thanks for sharing that, Greg, but you know what? I figure if you're going to be in with me on this, you're in for a penny, in for a pound. You get the whole thing. So, anyway. All right, so we got that. The next thing that we need to do now is we need to install the trigger. Now, these can be tricky, okay? So you need you're definitely going to want a pair of tweezers like this. I prefer the curved end ones like that. Stupid thing. And anyway, so yeah, you want a set of these, and then inside of these there's two bearings on either side of the trigger, and then those spacers we were talking about earlier go in between there. Now, this is one of the great uses for the Ultra Slick. This works really, really well. And I have been doing this for a while with these. So you take these little spacers, you dunk them in, blow it out, because you only want like that much, right? You don't need a ton. Oh shit, my bearing fell out. This bearing is not really that tight in there. So we'll put that in there. And then I just set my little spacer right over top of the bearing there. And then we're going to have to do this slightly differently than the way I normally do it because of how loose that bearing is. So we're going to have to get a little creative. So we're going to take this guy and we're going to slide it in there. And you have to be really careful that you don't push that spacer. All right, that spacer needs to be aligned correctly, or you won't be able to get the screw in. So there it is. But now, since we have that one bearing that wants to be a bit of a turd, we can't really do it the way we normally do. So we have to do the backup way, where you got to kind of, shit, I'm not even holding on to it. No wonder I can't get it in, right? And then we're going to slide this guy right in here. And this is really, this is a lot harder than it looks. As much as I hate to say it. Usually what I do is I put these things both on the same side. Or I put them both on either side, and then I run them in. All right. So now I can see through this side. The other one kind of came out of alignment. I'll just put my tweezers in there and spread them out, and then that'll do that. And without moving this thing too much, you slide that, slide your shoulder screw in, and you take your Allen key and you run that guy home. And sometimes it takes a little bit of, to do it. Sometimes it doesn't. Really just depends on what kind of mood it's in. And there we go. That's how to do the trigger on a RIP frame. So let's go ahead and we will install the safety. So we have a new safety here since that other spring is mangled. Fun fact, if you lose the ball or the spring, just buy a whole new safety. They're literally like, I think they're like $10. And if you buy just the spring or just the ball, it's still a couple bucks, and then you got to pay the shipping on top of it. So just buy the whole safety. So when we're doing safeties, right? This is one of those this is one of those things that it's always a good idea to do. I know a lot of guys like to say, oh, I don't need a safety. And, you know, I think, you know, maybe with a lot of guns that's true, but I think it's better to have one and not use it than to need it and then not have it. So I think safeties are, I think it's a good idea. Everybody should get into practice of using them. I know it's, a lot of guys think it's, you know, it's cool. Oh yeah, I don't need to use my safety because I'm, you know, some old school awesome guy. And you never, it's one of those things, you like never really do it. Like you think it's cool until it's no longer cool. Till, you know, you set your gun down, it goes off, and you shoot somebody, hits them in the eye or some crazy shit like that. So, just food for thought. Be responsible. Use your safety. I know some guns, you know, some autocockers from some manufacturers do not come with safeties installed. And hey, that's on them. But I'm not gonna name names or talk bad about anybody because that's just not what I do. But it's definitely a good idea to use a safety. So anyway, we're going to install our blank off plate for the auto trigger, which this also functions as a rear trigger stop, so you can really dial in your trigger exactly how you want it. And there we go. So we got our safety installed. This thing's really nice and blistering smooth. And we used our ultra slick boom for assembling our rip frame. So the last piece of doing the rip frame now is just this, just the grips. So good Lord, man, that cat really took a huge dump. It stinks. All right. So we'll go ahead, we'll run this screw in. And the wife's up there bitching at the kids about something. Fun stuff. And whoa. Good thing about being fat, right? I can stop screws from falling to the floor. Save me from having to get down there and crawl around and start digging around. All right, there we go. So that is the quick and dirty on how to build a rip frame. Now these things are really crazy adjustable. There's so many adjustment points. So you have an adjustment point here that controls your back travel. You have an adjustment point here that controls your forward travel. And then in the face of the screw, there's actually 4 screws that you can put in there to really dial this thing in. Inception ships them with 2 screws in the face so that you can just secure it so it's not flopping around. But you can add extra screws in there and really dial this thing in all kinds of different ways. If you're an adjustability fan, it's going to be a good idea for you to get a rip frame now, because I believe a couple of these holes are going away. But this top hole, you can actually use this to help control your hammer drop, because it forces up on the trigger plate, which then forces this guy, your sear, down a little bit. So if you just want to do like a slight tweak to your hammer drop without adjusting the lug, you can just force this guy down by screwing that screw up a little bit. Pretty cool. But yeah, I've been playing with these things since they were released in July, and just there's so much adjustability on these things. They're just really a great frame, especially if you like hinges, which I'm not a huge hinge fan, but I can certainly appreciate them. And I don't think this guy's going to come off. Oh, maybe it will. It would be pretty nice because I don't want to have to make the guy buy another. I don't want to make the guy have to buy another beaver tail. All right, so that's that. So we got our frame, we got our reg, our body is most of the way in, assembled here. So now we get into some of the other stuff. So we have this here is the vertical ASA, and I gotta see if I have a screw that'll work there. I know I bought a bunch, and I don't remember what I did with them. Time to dig around in the old toolbox again. I do apologize. I really try to be more organized when I do these videos so that we're not bumbling about like idiots. But this is kind of a spur of the moment one, so... I think I actually might be out of those, so... I really got to spend some time and go through and organize my toolbox again. It often feels like it's just a futile thing to do because so often I end up yeah, that ain't gonna fit. Man, I'm pretty certain I used all those. What's that? No, that's not it. It just amazes me how many times like I buy stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm set for a while. And then like you never really think about it. And then you get down and then a while passes, right? And a while is long since over, and then you're back to digging around trying to find the shit that you need in the toolbox. And the real kicker of it is I'm pretty certain I bought those screws too not long ago, and they should be in a little brown paper bag, and they are AWOL. But it is entirely possible they all got used. So fun watching me dig through my toolbox, huh guys? It's amazing all the shit I find in here too. All the stuff that you kind of accumulate as you're working on these guns is just really kind of crazy. Like I end up with stuff that I'm like, where the hell did this come from? Oh, I found maybe this is the bag. I just found the little brown paper bag I was waxing poetic about. So let's see what this is. Nope, it's washers. Damn it. Oh, it's so fun so fun having to sit and watch me go through my toolbox. But I would really like to be able to finish this build up just with you guys tonight, because this has actually been on deck for a while, and just with the new job and being sick, I just haven't it's been really tough getting caught up. So, but it is what it is, right? Dum 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 dum. Oh. No. Got excited, but it wasn't the right one. Sure looked like it. Well, guess I'll be off to the hardware store to finish this guy up. Medium mid, mini. Alright, well, we're just going to have to circle back and do that part tomorrow. But it's the easy part, so I'm sure you guys can figure that out, right? Alright, so, you know, basically an O-ring goes here, and then a screw goes there, and then this screws onto here like so, and then the timing rod goes through there, and you pull the trigger, it goes boom. So really pretty cool stuff. So, this is what I got here. So he sent me this front block, and I guess I need to disassemble this. But he really kind of chewed up his pneumatics here. So let's see what we can do to get these guys apart. This looks oh wow. Wow, this is not very good pneumatic hose. This stuff is really, 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 really hard, which is not good when you're dealing with pneumatics. So this stuff, it shouldn't crush, it shouldn't peanut butter spread, it shouldn't behave like that. So, but this stuff is really, really hard. So, but we're gonna save those hose locks. Get those off. And then we're just gonna put all new, we'll put all new hose on here. That's the right thing to do. All right, so there's all our hose locks. Let's get the rest of this crappy, oh sweet. So if you look there at that little piece of pneumatic line stayed on there. Fucking, yeah, this is really shitty macro, or not macro line, pneumatic line. Yeah, so look, it just stretches and spaghettis as you try and get it off because it's just too hard. It's not the right stuff. It definitely helps if there's a little bit of pliability in there. It's going to help it last longer too. All right, so pneumatics. Where is my we go. So first things first, we want to take the barb off. And if you do this in this order, you don't really have to screw with it too much. So usually I'll take the LPR off, but I take it off the base. See what I'm doing there? Then we're going to use a socket with a 5/8 driver on it. And this is a lot easier when it's still mounted to the gun. Need something to try and get a better grip on it here. It's like cutting into my hand. Shit, we might have to put this guy in the vise. That's really on there. Well, anyway, that part's off. So let's see if we can get the ram off here. And the problem that we're running into is this, the banjo bolt is just, it's like right up against, it's like jammed into the ram. So you can kind of see that. So I'm going to try and loosen it to get it down past the edge of the ram, but there's not really enough room to do that. Alright, there we go. Oh. There we go. Alright, so we got the ram off. And I don't know what the hell they have on here. This looks like Teflon tape on there, but they must have really wrenched that into that front block. So with your ram, always want to check that for suction. This guy has good suction. You can see, usually what I do is I block the front port and I just pull it back, and you can tell if it has good suction. So that's how you do that. And I'm not going to be able to get the three-way off. So we're going to switch over here to trusty Mr. Vise. And we're going to see about getting this this guy off of the front block hopefully without fucking up the front block too much. And if you guys don't have a vise and you want to work on guns, you really should buy a vise. It's just one of those things, you need it, and you don't need anything really crazy. It's just the one I use is just a little Harbor Freight one. So as you can see, there's the vise that I have. It's a it's a Harbor. I got it at Harbor Freight, and it's actually a really good vise. It's got a bunch of different positions that you can put stuff in, which makes it helpful, especially for autocockers, because there's always crazy weird shit that you have to do with these things. And then you get yourself a piece of leather or a decent quality those jar things for opening jars, and then you can hold the pieces that you need to take apart. And lo and behold, there's our LPR base, and we're gonna clean that up. It looks like they used they used Teflon tape on there, and that's, I don't want to say it's a no-no, but there's way better ways to do it than using Teflon tape. All right, so we got our three-way here. This is V2 as well, so that's nice. All right. So let's clean up these threads. Teflon tape is really, the only time you should really use that is if you cannot get a seal on a thread, like it's loose. That's really the only time you should be using Teflon tape. Teflon tape is designed to be a lubricant. It's not really designed to be a sealant. And it's just terrible stuff. I mean, it has its place. But the reality is we've been misusing it in paintball for, 30 years. And it really, there's stuff out there that does the job better with less hassle than Teflon tape. And in this case, like, it wasn't even really, like, there was only a little bit of the Teflon tape in the body. So there really wasn't that great of a seal on the threads anyway. So there we go. Look at that. It just doesn't, I hate this stuff. I really do. I mean, it's one of those necessary evils. I keep it in my toolbox for when I need it, but I really try to avoid using it unless if there's a specific case where I need to use it. All right. It just really gets nasty in your threads, and one thing I really hate is it turns yellow, and it really looks like shit. All right, so instead of Teflon tape, this is what you should be using. Boom, Loctite 545. This is a pneumatic sealant. And what that means is that this is actually going to work its way into the threads. And you don't need a ton of it. You just coat your threads like so. Just like that. And you let it sit a while. And while we're waiting for that, this stuff tastes terrible. Do not lick that. It's not blueberry. My kid got some on his finger one time, and that's exactly what it did. He was like, "Ooh, that was gross." All right, so let's get to dealing with this front block. So we're going to put some O-rings on here. Just for brevity, we're going to use 2 number 13s, or 113s rather. One in the front, one in the back. And I know I said I really didn't want to put a volumizer on here, but I think we might as well just do it. Then it's done. Since he sent the part and all, figure we might as well use it. There we go. Now we put the other 113 on the back. And the one thing I like about the WGP spec bodies is that you can, you really don't have to, you can start it and do this number with it. But then you got to make sure you line everything up. So I'll tilt this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here using my Allen tool here, my Allen key, my trusty gold Bondus, which I know I really kind of harp about Allen keys quite a lot, but the reality is with them you get what you pay for, and I definitely am a big fan of buying stuff that is quality, that isn't going to be a piece of shit. So that's why I really recommend using the Bondus Allen keys. So once you get your banjo bolt or your volumizer in there, you want to take a look. You want to make sure everything lines up right. A good way to do that is just kind of look. I usually sight it up through the hole for the ram, and just make sure that's good and in line with the body here. And then this will probably have to get tweaked later on. After we build everything, we'll have to go back and kind of loosen this up and just rejigger this to make sure it's in the right spot. One thing I really kind of wish on these WGP spec bodies, I wish there was a set screw on this front block so that you could, just run a screw in there and have it hold it fast so it doesn't wiggle. But unfortunately, this is an early generation one, so you can tell it still has the Inception logo on the front here. So That's not something that was on those. I don't think that's on the newer Ripper styles, the newer WGP Rippers either. But I don't know. I'm sure Simon knows what he's doing. He has a plan. So now we're going to put this LPR back on here. Well, not back on, but install it on the Ripper. So as soon as you start feeling that grip, that's when you need to stop tightening, okay? And that's when you need to save that tightening for when you're going to how you're going to line up your LPR. So since this is going to have a volumizer, we want to have we need to have the hole needs to be able to get to over here so that we can go over or through underneath the thing. And right now it's here. So it's sticking straight out almost. So we need to get a quarter turn plus out of that. So usually what I do is I'll line my socket wrench up and I'll turn it to where I want it. And then that should be good. Because you do have a little bit of play in how these guys sit on the on this plate here. So and I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. So you see, I have my hole lined up so it points a little bit out that way, but there's a big fat O-ring there, so I can turn this as far as there, or actually even a little further before it has any kind of adverse effects. So that way I have room to work if I need to. So usually what I'll do is I'll install the barb and the hose and everything, and then I'll line it up, and then I'll run the hose onto the three-way when we get there. So speaking of the three-way, oh shit, I jumped the gun. I got all excited telling you guys about why I did that. What size butt driver? It's a 1/4 inch for the barbs. And then for these little tiny barbs, you actually need to get a special, there's a special set that I have. I'm not sure where it is at the moment. It should be in that toolbox, but it's not there. Oh, shit. Man, I totally jumped the gun on this. Because guess what? Now I got to uninstall this thing because I forgot to install. The three-way has to go on before the LPR. Because the three-way barbs can't clear the LPR. Ever. So, okay. See, even I make mistakes. Even I make mistakes on these guns. So don't feel bad. Making a mistake is half the fun in some cases. Alright, so that's good and tight again. And what the hell's that? And we'll see where this lines up. Oops. Now, one of the things you really don't want to do is you don't want to screw this. You don't want to screw that in too far. It's a tapered thread on the LPRs, so when you run that thing in, you know it's basically a wedge shape. And I don't know if you have to worry about cracking the front block, but honestly, I don't want to be the guy who's going to find that out. But I know that you run them in too much, and it gets to be a real treat when you have to take them off to do any kind of service to them. So support your local cocker guy, and don't run your LPR in like you're the Incredible Hulk. That's why I like This is another reason why I like the retros, because you have that, you can get a grip on the regulator. All right, so there we are. We got the pneumatics, well, most of the pneumatics placed there. Let me see. I don't know if I have a. No, that's a mini. I have some full-size. I have the full-size pump arms here somewhere. It's just a matter of finding where. That's for a pump. We are going to need some pneumaticos, so we'll drop some of that there. All right, time to go over to the parts box. Even though I am pretty certain I do not have a pump arm over here, we'll do due diligence and look. I thought I had an extra one floating around here somewhere. This one. There we go. Bingo. I knew I had one. Just had to find it. Okay, so let's do our ram. And again, check them for pressure. I actually have a couple here that don't have any compression. So I need to get some O-rings for them and get them fixed, but I don't want to confuse them with the good rams, because that would just be a pain. I don't know if you've ever been through the pain of assembling a gun and then realizing that the ram is bad on it, and you have to rip the whole damn thing apart. I was doing that this weekend. I spent like 2 hours screwing around with a gun that had a bad ram on it, and I was trying to time it, and it was weird because it wouldn't stay. It wasn't like consistently bad. Like it would work for a little bit, and then it would just gradually fail. So I wasn't sure exactly what the problem was, and then it kind of dawned on me, you know what, I bet the ram has a bad seal on it. And what the hell did I do with my wrench? I have a little tiny 4mm wrench that I use for tightening these guys up. And since I'm breaking my own rules and I'm working on a messy table, I can't seem to find my, there it is. So this takes a 4mm wrench on the ram, and you just tighten it down like so. And again, don't be Superman, all right? If it doesn't have any kind of a Loctite or anything on there, just put a little blue Loctite, not a ton, just put a little bit on there. And then you just get it tight. It doesn't need to be, you're not Hulk Hogan. You don't need to pretend to be Hulk Hogan and really crank down on it. Now, since this has a volumizer on it, we have to take both barbs off of the ram. If you were not using a volumizer, then you wouldn't have to take. You'd only have to take the rear barb off. Or you can just install your ram before you screw your LPR on the base which do the base first always, and then install your ram. Then you don't have to worry about hitting the ram with your ratchet. And this is important with the ram. So there's an O-ring there, right? And a lot of times guys get to that point and they wrench it further all the way around, and that's not really what it's for. So what you want to do, you screw it on there, and then you get to this point, right? So it's starting to get tight, and it's starting to compress that O-ring. As soon as it gets there, you're too far, okay? Just turn a little forward, all right? So that, because guess what? You're going to have the pneumatic hoses are going to be hooking to here, and the LPR and the three-way. They're all going to make sure that everything stays in place, okay? So you don't have to worry about wrenching everything down. I get guys that they jump up and down because like there's not set screws put in here and over here, and it's like you don't need them. You really don't need them. The hoses are going to make sure that it stays put. So I think guys really like to get uptight about some stuff that that doesn't really it really doesn't help things. All right. So being that this is these are they're paintball guns, right? So they're not they're machine. They have good tolerances and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, there's still slight there's still variations in how these things fit together and how they're machined, and you need to account for that. And locking everything down really doesn't help your cause, and it really just makes your life a lot more difficult. So thus endeth the sermon. All right, so what do you say we put some nice fresh pneumatic hose on here? And I do this my own way. I know that guys, some guys like to measure it out, and I don't. I used to do it. I used to be super anal retentive. I actually used to have a big bin that had like sections in it, and that was my. I had different lengths of the pneumatic hose, pre-cut, ready to go, fit perfect every time, and I realized that it's really a colossal waste of time to do that, so I stopped doing it. I have a tendency to be anal retentive, which that really makes me... That's one of the reasons I think why I'm good at working on these guns, because I'm so anal retentive. I like things a certain way, and autocockers like to be a certain way for them to work right. So I think it's a pretty good match. So we're going to... So anyway, so what I do is I kind of eyeball it up, and one of the things I really don't like about volumizers is they really make putting the hoses on a pain in the balls. Usually I can do hoses in like no time at all. Like I would literally be done at this point, but because it has a volumizer, well, that just makes life that much more sucky right now. So, all right, so we're going to do the middle hose now. Now with this, usually I route my middle hose over the volumizer like that. And then the tough part is getting enough hose to where you can, you need to have enough hose to be able to get it down over top of that barb. And it can be a little tricky, so this is going to be we might be redoing this a couple times, like re-snipping this guy a few times here till we get it right. Don't forget to put your hose lock on there, like I did. Oh shit! You know what? I'm doing this completely the wrong way. I guess I should listen to myself when I'm talking. So you want to start on the LPR side. I really have my head in my ass today, so bear with me. So you start on the LPR side, and you put your hose lock on, then you feed it through. And then once you get it most of the way fed through, then you want to turn it in like that, okay? And then we'll put our other hose lock in place. And we have way more hose than what we need. But unfortunately, you need that extra length of hose to clear it. And you're going to need a little bit extra to get this on the barb. So we're going to take another, you know, 1/2 inch off of there. And then we can feed this down on the 3-way barb. So when you're doing volumizers, the easiest way to do it, you start on the LPR, and then you feed it over to the 3-way. Usually I cable up my 3-way, and then I run my hoses, or then I attach my hoses to whatever barb, whatever the other thing I'm trying to get to, right? In this case, when you're dealing with a volumizer, you do that. You do that later. So we need another piece of hose here. And this time we're going to start on the 3-way barb. And then we're going to route this guy up here like so. And we'll put our hose locks on there. And we're almost done. So we've been at this a little while. All right. So there you go. That's what your there's maybe a little bit extra here. I might go back and clean that up because I'm anal retentive, but I think it looks okay. But it just makes it easier when you have to work on this if you have a little bit extra on between the LPR and the 3-way. So just keep that in mind when you guys are building your fancy guns. All right, so next stop. Let's talk about this pump arm. So the pump arm, I'm a big fan of locking it down. I use a little bit of VC3 on there. This stuff is, you need to have this in your toolbox, period. I use this shit on everything. So like Frank's Red Hot, this is, VC3 is the Frank's Red Hot of paintball stuff, right? You put that shit on everything. It's great stuff. You use it on the jam nut. I use it on the valve retainer. I use it on the pump arm. I use it anything that I don't want to wiggle out, right? Sometimes I'll use it on frame screws, but I do try to avoid using it on frame screws. It's great stuff. You should have it in your toolbox. So I put a little bit on the pump arm. So let's go ahead and I guess we can kind of test mount the frame. Actually, no, I'm going to wait because I don't feel like ripping this thing apart again. Or I don't feel like ripping this thing apart to install it. But we can go ahead and kind of fit everything up so you can kind of see what it's all going to look like when it's done. So I just need to get a, that's going to be a pretty bitchin' looking gun right there, man. Once everything is dialed in. He did a rail too, but I'm not, I'm going to flush mount it, and if he wants to put his rail on his way, then I'll let him do that. So he does need a ball detent, so we'll install that a while. Go over here and get one. one here because I just got one in. Now it's just a matter of where did I put it? I really got to start remembering where I put stuff. I spend more of my day looking for stuff than I don't put in the right place. I just need to get more bins so that I can, actually I guess I have enough bins, but where did I put those? This has pretty much been how my day's been going. Because I know I just got a couple of them in and I don't know what I did with them. They should be right there in the toolbox. Why the hell are they not? There's that. There's those. Aha! Found it. It was right where I thought it was. All right. And I get stuff like this, like ball detents. I like to keep them in the toolbox because, like, I'll be at events and guys will be like, "Oh, do you have any ball detents?" Yes, I have ball detents. Then it's like we don't always take the all the parts over to the tent because, you know, we have so much shit. You spend half the day just carrying stuff back and forth to the tent that a lot of times we leave a lot of the small parts that we don't use often in the in the trailer locked up. So there we go. Installed our ball detent, and these are real easy. There's an O-ring on there, and that goes over the threads, and it just screws in. These things are rebuildable, and you actually get an extra ball and a spring with it. So if something happens and it blows apart or whatever, you got an extra ball and a spring for it. So these are really good ball detents. I haven't had that happen in any of my guns that I have, so that's pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and install the back block. So this back block, all the retros are drilled so that you can run a screw to secure them in. These are not. So that's another reason why we put VC3 on there. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to screw this on here like so. Jesus Christ, why am I struggling? Struggling with the basic stuff. There we go. Or not. There we go. Now it's going. All right. Now, when you're putting this on, you want to make sure that you don't thread this in too far. This back block should not be hitting the body. And I tell guys this all the time. If your back block is hitting the body, you're doing it wrong. Okay? So make sure the back block is not hitting the body. So then we're going to run in our cocking rod, and actually we're going to put a little VC3 on there, because that there was not a set screw for the cocking rod on that. It took one, but it did not have the set screw for the cocking rod installed. I do not have those screws, and so I'll just put a little VC3 on there. That'll do the trick, because we have the Inception ASA in, or IVG in there. So we'll let that dry for a minute. So we're pretty close. I need to get a bolt, so I'll do that right now. So these are the new Inception Tridents, and these bolts are really, really great. I'm pretty happy with them. Oh, wait a minute. What the hell is this? Post 2017? No, that's the wrong one. Nope. Well, that's actually a V2. No. No, it's not. What the fuck is that? That's a soft tip. Son of a bitch. This is the Trident. This is the Trident here. Thought that looked a little screwy when I was walking over here. Alright, and you get this whole cool set of O-rings with it. And I will explain those O-rings in just a second. So, what's up? Oh, Jesus. Can't get the pin out. Alright, so we'll try backing it off a little bit. Yeah, never not been able to get the pin out like that before. That's weird. Guess Simon was feeling his oats that day, huh? Alright, so you get an extra set of O-rings on here, actually 2 sets. And the reason being is, so just like we talked about with the lower tube, the upper tube is also a little bit smaller of a diameter. So as you can see, this bolt doesn't fit in with the O-rings on it from the factory. These are set up for retros. So what we're going to do is we are going to get our trusty O-ring tool out here, and we're going to pop these guys off, and we're going to put the smaller diameter O-rings on there. Now, one thing about these bolts is that you really need to pay attention to the diameter of the O-rings that you're putting on and making sure that they're in the right order. So it's a little confusing because they're all the same size, depending, if you're using WGP or retro, but anyway, so they're all the same size, but they're going to have a different hardness. So what you're going to do is you're going to line this up, and you just give them a little pinch, and you can tell really quick which ones are the higher diameter. Oops. Put that on there. And you want to put the hardest one on the front notch there. There we go. All right, and then place where I use my Ultra Slick. And this is one of those, this lube is really, so this is essentially like, it's like Dow 33 with oil mixed in, right? You can smell the oil on it. So oil is not great for Delrin, but what I use it for is I wet the O-rings down and then I wipe all the excess off. All right, so there's none of that oil-based lube sitting on the Delrin to cause any problems. And then I'm going to run that guy in, and it should fit snug, but it should be smooth. So you can see, you know, it slides in and out, but you can it's not wiggling. It's not like throwing a hot dog down a hallway. It has a good fit. All right, yeah, that looks great. Look at that. I even got it set the right way the first time. That's awesome. So let's we'll put our cocking rod in. And then we can check that. Yep, that's good. We're clearing the breech. All right. All right, so pretty much the only things we have left to do are install the three-way stem, which we'll do now. And this is actually kind of one of those, this is an early version of the V2 because it doesn't have the milled down base. They do exist, but that was really very early. So there's not tons of them out there. Most of them will be milled down. And we'll put that in there. And this actually looks like our front block might be a little askew. Yeah. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. Let's see how it lines up. Because it is going to be a hell of a lot easier to line this guy up when it's... Oh, yeah. We're good. We're good. Now the fun part about this is, oh shit. Now the fun part about this is we're gonna have to take this timing rod off anyway. This isn't the right timing rod. So we'll probably be installing a timing rod on there. And then I have to go and get the right screw for the thing there, and this guy will be done. So there will be a part 2 to finish this guy out. So hopefully we won't be. Hopefully it won't take too long. It probably won't be tomorrow night, but who knows? It might be. We'll see. I'll be traveling for work tomorrow, so I might or I might not be on finishing this guy up tomorrow. So we'll see. But it's pretty cool when you guys join me. I enjoy it. So, it's a motivator. Alright. So that should be enough there. So, okay. So all we need to do is get the screw for here. And I should have the O-rings for that, and I think we are going to be good to go. So anyway, so this is Greg from NFG Customs. I am going to call it a night because it's almost 10 o'clock, and we will finish this up probably Tuesday night, but maybe tomorrow night. Again, we'll see how I'm feeling when I get back from my work travel tomorrow, and we will talk soon. Have a wonderful night, and thank you for joining.